So I would like to welcome today Marisa Simmons to the Legally Blissed podcast. So let me tell everyone a little bit about Marisa. I absolutely loved the bio that she sent me, and she was like, I hope it's okay. But when I read it, I was like, oh, this is perfect. So Marisa is a recovering attorney turned recruiter in lovely Atlanta, Georgia. She recruits and replaces and places top attorneys with law firms and companies throughout the Southeast, manages a team of incredible recruiters she's humbled to work alongside, and she actually enjoys networking. More importantly, in her off hours, Marisa is known as Allison Ryan's mom, that lady who's always running the streets of her neighborhood, a driver of a stick shift station wagon, killing it, Marisa. I love it. And that annoying person at the table who has very strong opinions about various brews of beer and is maybe too direct with the server. She's learned to be a graceful loser. She's a lifelong fan of the Buffalo Bills, Atlanta Falcons, and Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, but has recently discovered that winning is fun too, now that the Braves have won the World Series for the first time since she was a teenager. Wow. A fan of books made out of paper. She reads mostly ebooks and listens to lots of podcasts. So that's good. Marisa has lived in Atlanta for 20 years and hopes to stay at least 20 more, barring inescapable climate change that will force us all to mountaintops or underground living facilities. So Marisa, huge welcome. And thank you so much for being here. And my first question is, are you going to the mountaintop or are you going to go to an underground facility?
It's a good first question. Probably the mountaintop. I think I need the fresh air. I'm a fan of mountains. I grew up in the mountains.
Yeah.
So that would just be like going home, but probably like without the winter snow when it comes.
Sure. So where is home? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Johnson City, Tennessee, which is like way out of the way. It's in the tiny part of Tennessee that's between North Carolina and Virginia. And we moved to South Florida while I was in middle school, which was a huge difference. I stayed there as long as I had to, and as soon as I turned 18 and graduated high school, I left and came to Georgia Tech for college, which Atlanta's like a middle ground between growing up in the true Southeast and South Florida, which is basically the Northeast. And I was born in the Northeast, actually. I was born in New York. So I'm like all over the place.
You are all over the place. Okay. So any residents west of the Mississippi, or are we East Coast girls all the way here?
East Coast only, although my sister has moved to Denver, which is tempting.
Yes. So question, this is important.
Okay.
You ski?
No. I've never skied. I've never put a ski on. I've tried water skiing. I'm incapable of water skiing.
Okay. So if you thought about Denver, you need to know that it's a requirement to move there. Like you have to learn how to ski.
It's like the only way to get around half the year.
It's basically the only way you can get around downtown Denver.
Right.
All year.
Yeah. Well, see, places like, the Midwest or Minneapolis, where they've like figured out like the gerbil living style, where they've got the tubes connecting all the buildings.
Yes.
Denver, like get on that so that those of us who like aren't able to live in the cold weather can still get around without having to ski places.
So maybe you're kind of weak. Maybe
Atlanta is a good place for me.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned Johnson City, because I'm actually in Kentucky between Knoxville and Lexington. So I am familiar with Eastern Tennessee. I've been down to Johnson City area a few times for my niece's softball tournaments on her travel ball team. So yeah, I'm kind of familiar with that area.
Yeah, people often say, oh, Knoxville for Eastern Tennessee. I'm like, no, that's like way west of where I grew up. That's not even East Tennessee compared to where I grew up. But yes, and people also know it because of Bristol, and that's where lots of races are.
Right.
And it's close to Bristol.
That's right. I forget about Bristol being over there and being such a huge hub for people that are into, and do they do NASCAR over there, or is it IndyCar or both?
NASCAR. I don't know, but when I was there, it was NASCAR.
Okay, it was NASCAR. Yeah. I think you're right. So, okay, we could talk all day about Eastern Tennessee and Georgia, which
That's
like
what people are here for.
as a Southern person, I'm all about it, but I do want to talk about legal stuff, right? Like I want to dig into Marisa and your story. So after you graduated from college, you went to Georgia Tech, right?
Yes.
You were a Yellow Jacket. And then where did you go to law school?
I went to Georgia State for law school. Decided to stay in Atlanta. I kind of applied all over the place. I knew I didn't want a real job at 22. My parents both had like advanced degrees, so a real job wasn't even quite an option for me then. I was totally confused by all of my classmates who were like filling out job applications, which back then were in paper. And I was like, what are all these paper people are filling out? And sure enough, they were like getting jobs at 22, which I thought sounded horrible. And med school was not in the cards. I was a business major. I was kind of over that. Law school seemed reasonable. So I went to law school.
Boom. There you are.
Not the most educated decision I ever made, but I did it.
There you are in torts, and you're like, what is going on? No,
what is a tort?
It's in what's a pop tort, right? I'm like, what is that? And whenever we talked about forum shopping in law school, I was always thinking about going to Vegas and shopping at Caesar's Palace. Like to me, that was like forum shopping. So this was all very new, right? So, okay. So law school, all of a sudden you're in law school and you're like, okay, how did I get here? Is there anything that you liked about law school, or did you love it? Did it really kind of serve that like, oh, I'm going to put off career for 3 more years?
It definitely served off putting off career for 3 more years and like growing up. It was a bit of an extension of college in terms of like the lifestyle. Although it definitely required substantially more reading. And I mean, Georgia Tech's no joke. I had to study through college too, but law school was on a different level. So, I spent a lot of the time partying. I spent a lot of the time reading. I spent a lot of the time outlining and wondering what the heck I was doing. But the thing with law school is it's so fast. Like you're 1 semester in and then you're like, gee, I only have 5 left. I can totally do that. And then a year in, it's like, there's only 2 years left. I can't give up now. 3 semesters in, you're halfway there. Like if there's like not a good excuse to not finish it because it's so fast, but the whole way through it's like, what am I doing here? And then I graduated law school 2008, which you may recall, not a great time to be looking for jobs. So the same went for lawyers, and I ended up being a bankruptcy attorney. I did consumer debtor litigation. So I like literally represented people who were filing bankruptcy for, the irresponsible reasons, but also tons of, really a 2-income household went to a 1 or 0 income household, for reasons obviously entirely out of their control. So it was a really hard time to be a bankruptcy lawyer.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything about bankruptcy. Sorry, I have allergies. I didn't know anything about bankruptcy besides like how to spell it. When I finished law school, I never took a single course. I actually wanted to do estate planning and probate litigation, which was like the opposite of what was happening in 2008. So I went down the path that was available to me at that point, which served me well, but was not my calling, to say the least.
Did you do that for 6 years? About 6 years?
I did it for 6 years. I moved firms once.
Okay. And you said that wasn't your calling. When did you figure that out, and what did that mean to you?
So, I mean, I knew before I even took like that first job that I knew I was lucky to get at that point. I knew beforehand, like, I'm going to keep looking for jobs. I don't want to be a bankruptcy lawyer. I don't know about anything about bankruptcy. I have no plan to even learn anything bankruptcy. I'm just going to find another job, but I need a paycheck. I enjoyed parts of the practice. Like I like the litigation. I like arguing hearings. I'm someone who can like easily stand up in a room and speak. So I really loved that part of it. And I even loved like the heavily regulatory aspect to it, like being able to read the code, learn the code, understand it, and then apply it. And it's because a very code-based practice area. So I understand, I appreciated that. But the actual like human piece of it, was just not for me. I'm like a people person, but there some things wear on you. 2008 through 2011 was a very like emotionally difficult time for everybody. You know, people were losing their houses and losing their cars and moving in with family, and it was a really hard time. But I think just generally there's always going to be like that irresponsible aspect of bankruptcy where it's like someone was just kind of like stupid. I had clients that would walk in like wanting to file bankruptcy, but they were wearing like coach shoes. It's like, do you see what's happening here?
Yeah.
Let's think about the things, you know. So I just, my patience was worn thin. I also just not a practice area that I think is meant for everyone forever. It's emotionally challenging. It's also, for me personally, a practice area that's open, and in my experience throughout Atlanta, it's a 6-day-a-week practice area. Like bankruptcy, consumer bankruptcy firms are open 6 days a week. I had my first kid. I asked to make a bit of a change to my schedule, and I was met with resistance. And that pretty much was, that was when I restarted my job search. Yeah.
And you realize something else out there will probably be more conducive to having a child, right?
Yeah, to like having a life even, than 6 days a week. But before, you know, I had been like young, I was in my 20s, and you know, I was, it like didn't really matter working 6 days a week. You know, I was friends with a lot of people that I worked with. We had a lot of fun. We managed to make it fun, and you know, we went out. And so for the lifestyle, when I did that, the lifestyle wasn't terrible, but as my life changed, and my work life, you know, maybe didn't. I had also changed firms at that point. I spent about just over a year at the second firm I was at before I left completely. And so that second firm was a very different lifestyle than the first. Not as, it wasn't as big of a firm. So it wasn't as, there weren't as many people that would like get together and hang out and do stuff and make it fun too. So, you know, once that part of it went away, plus I had a kid, just forget it. It wasn't, but I did apply for other jobs. Like I applied for other positions practicing, but I didn't want to stay in bankruptcy. So it would have meant totally restarting as a, you know, entry-level associate.
Sure. Which could be intimidating, right? In itself.
Intimidating, and also is like impossible to do. You know, a lot of firms don't want to take a 5th or 6th year and teach them fresh, or don't even want to like have the conversation about like, well, we're going to pay you like a first year, you know? Mm-hmm. So, you know, you just don't, the term pigeonholed comes to mind, but you do get a little bit stuck for lots of reasons. And I ended up getting fired from that job, which was a huge blessing. And the very next day I got a call about a job I had applied for, but I had no memory of applying for because it was done in like my post-pregnancy haze. And one thing led to the next, and here I am recruiting.
That's so serendipitous. So let's talk about recruiting, right? And that transition. So before, your clients were humans walking the street who were wearing coach shoes and going through bankruptcy. Now your clients are technically attorneys, right?
And law firms and companies.
Mm-hmm. I don't fully understand how recruiters work. So you work primarily for the law firm. Your client is
yeah. So I work for an outside recruiting firm. Right. called Beacon Hill. We're based in Boston. We have recruiters in all sorts of industries. As a former lawyer, I just work with attorneys. And so I am like an outside recruiter, and I partner with law firms, large and small, with companies. I specifically focus on positions throughout the Southeast, but we place full-time, well, not full-time, could be any time period, but permanent positions, no temporary or contract work, just permanent positions, associate, partner, counsel, general counsel, those types of roles. And then the company or the law firm is the one who pays our bills.
Okay, awesome. So do you foresee an upheaval in movement of lawyers in 2022?
It's been happening already starting this year. Last year, nothing last year, everyone tightened their belts. I think a lot of law firms did even better than originally expected before COVID really hit. Obviously law firms had their projections for the year. A lot of law firms then reassessed those once the world changed, and it lowered their expectations. A lot of firms still met or exceeded their original expectations, but they did it without hiring people for the most part. There were very few firms that were hiring. And understandably, a lot of people not willing to make a job change because the market was so unstable, and it was, who knows if you're going to end up being last in, first out. So there was really no movement, but a lot of people lost their jobs. A lot of people left their jobs for various reasons. And then this year, those firms that had done well needed people, but they had needed to hire last year too. They just didn't because of the fear of doing anything last year. And so this year has been just wildly busy. People are comfortable making a move again. Companies and firms are comfortable hiring again. And I don't expect it to slow down into the new year. And I for the foreseeable number of months, I would say I don't think it's going to go back to like the old pre-2020 levels, even for a little while.
Wow.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What is like the biggest mistake that you see attorneys making? Potentially.
That's a big question.
Where do I start? Okay, so I guess I would say, like, in terms of when they're looking to transition, right? Is it a behavior? Is it a lack of a behavior? Is it the failure to do something? Like, I mean, I'm going to be honest here. It's been a couple of years since I've been in the, like the hiring game, like even thinking about that. Like my CV is probably a complete disaster. I don't even know. But, just like thank you notes, right? Do people do email thank you notes? Like, do they do them handwritten? Like anything? Like, what do you see these youngsters? Where are they kind of misstepping in all of this?
So there's a lot of things like with the job search that I think people like don't think about, or things have changed. Like, do you write a handwritten thank you note, or is it too late by the time it comes in the mail? Email, by the way, email thank you note. But I think it's like just the whole picture. I think something hugely challenging is when you don't know what you're doing, it ruins the entire process. Job searching, luckily for me, can be a full-time job. And so, but a lot of people go into it just with the one resume, and they're going to like click through jobs online that look like a fit and just hit apply. From your resume, is your resume well tailored to that particular position? Is your cover letter appropriate? Are you just regurgitating what's in your resume? Do you know what you're looking for? Whether it's, are you trying to run away from something, or are you running towards something? What is it? What's motivating you? I ask a very pertinent question. What salary range do we need to be looking at? And there are a lot of different levels of salary ranges that are market, quote unquote, for various, even within a single, geographical market, based on the practice area or the firm type or the company type. And, so you could have a market competitive salary that's wildly different from another market competitive salary within the same city. And you have to know what that looks like, and you have to know what your budget is, and you have to know what you can afford to do. And people will get golden handcuffed by their salaries, or just not understand that. If it's not about the money, what else is it? How do you interview appropriately to get the information that you need to make a decision? I think a lot of people go into it like we all do in the first job search, right? Like, I just need a job, I'll just take a job. But after that point, most of the time, you're not just looking for a job. This is a career. You're interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. And I think a lot of people don't make that kind of connection in their head. You're judging these people too. Like, do you want to work with them? So there's so many things along the way that can go wrong. But I think, I think you really have to know what you want or what you're trying to get away from in order to at least start the process right, on the right foot.
So what are best practices with respect to salary talk in the interview process? Is that acceptable to, like, is that a subject that's appropriate to talk about early, like for first interview, or is there etiquette around all of this?
I think when you are applying for a job, whether you're going through a recruiter or doing it on your own, you need to know. You don't want to waste your own time. You don't want to waste the time of the people that you're interviewing with. Lawyers live in 6-minute increments. Like, you don't want to waste that. So to some extent, you need that information up front. If you're working with a recruiter, the recruiter should be able to give you an idea of that before you walk into an interview. If you're applying on your own, you can, if the job position doesn't say it, you can Google, you can look for that information online. If it's a firm that maybe you could get a general estimate, Glassdoor, God knows how like reliable those numbers are. I don't know, but there's at least plenty of places where you can get some insight at least. If you're applying on your own and you get a call back, usually it's going to be by like a firm administrator or someone like that. And you can say at that point, before we schedule something, I would like to make sure that my salary expectations are in line with what you all are looking for. And it's completely appropriate to ask, in the interest of everyone's time. When you're physically sitting in an interview, especially the first interview, I don't love talking about money. There's way more important stuff to get to in the first round of interview, like if your background is a fit, what they're looking for, what the long-term expectations are these people that you would like to spend your whole life with? Those are things that are more important for the substance of the interview. And again, it's all about everyone's time. If you're going to continue the conversation, that's a good time to start talking about the numbers again. I hate the idea of getting to the end of a job search and like suddenly you find out what the salary is. That's crazy. That should not ever happen. That really
should not happen, right?
Yeah. So there are appropriate ways to do it. But like anything that's kind of HR related, or like in an employee manual, or related to time off, or anything that's not truly substantive the position, if you're working with the recruiter should be able to get those answers for you or negotiate those things on your behalf. If you're not working with the recruiter, those are things you should be able to talk to the firm administrator or a partner about on the phone after an interview, before, not in the setting of an interview. Partners and associates don't always know that information, first of all. But like, that's just not what they're there to talk about. They're there to talk about the job. And when people don't know the answer, either they'll say they don't know, which is fine, or they'll like make up an answer, and then you're going on information that God knows if that's right. So it's just not the time to ask about things. Plus, you don't want to sound like money is your number one factor, or that the work-life balance is the motive, like there's better ways of getting those answers.
So who is a good candidate to work directly with someone like you?
That's a very good question. It's a little bit difficult to describe specifically. We work with a very broad range of law firms. I'll say law firms, I'll start there. Anyone with top credentials, top 50 law school, honors, cum laude, whatever, have been in big law or something comparable, partners with books of business, those type of people, we can pretty much always work with you. You have a very marketable background. Firms are willing to open up opportunistic positions for the right person often, especially in practice areas where there's high need, commercial real estate, corporate transactions, these days technology transactions, various types of litigation, intellectual property. Those are practice areas that are always in very high demand and require, for the most part, very well credentialed lawyers. And so those are the type of people that we can pretty much always work with, and if not find you something immediately, generally do it pretty quickly. But then, like, my favorite clients to work with are the boutique firms. Big law firms will work with everyone. They're great. They're fantastic for my bottom line. But the boutique firms are like where you really get to build relationships and like enjoy working with people. A lot of the boutique firms that I work with in town, I've worked with since I started recruiting. There's one partner who, the first time I met him, I was wildly pregnant with my second child, and he still asks me how the baby is, and she's 5.
That's awesome.
Not a baby. He's had grandkids since I met him.
And he says, how's the baby, right? And you're like,
yeah, I should be asking him how's the baby. He's the one with babies now. But I love that, because that's what makes it really fun and really rewarding, is like those firms. So some boutique firms, of course, have very high expectations and also expect the type of people that the big law firms do. But a lot of the boutique firms are really looking more for experience than for, shiny credentials. And those attorneys are fun to work with too, because they're not people that often work with recruiters. They're certainly not people who are getting recruiter calls and emails regularly. They're often more dynamic. They're a little bit more people-y than like your big law lawyers. So it's just fun to work with those. Like, I've got a couple of small firm searches right now in practice areas you don't see a lot in big firms: estate planning, which is what I wanted to do, tax controversy, which is their version of saying litigation, but they don't call it litigation.
That's interesting.
Don't call it tax litigation. You clearly, like, they'll all turn and look at you. Tax controversy, municipal. I have municipal litigation, so firms that represent like the local governments. So very cool practices. Both my estate planning and my tax controversy, 2 different firms, their clients are like sports stars, and Atlanta has lots of famous people who live here. So we've got, like cool, sexy stuff to do, but it's not in the big firms. And so there's like those types of people too that I enjoy working with. And I went to Georgia State Law School. So like our top grads go to big firms, but like the normal people like me, don't. They get, your more regular jobs, but I enjoy getting to work with those people. It just kind of like warms up my heart a little bit more. And then we do a lot of in-house searching. And as much fun as that is, it's everyone wants in-house jobs. So it's challenging in that you have a lot more people to sort through. I love it. I love it when a GC is like, hey, want a new job? And I'm like, great, your network's going to be way better for finding you a new job, Mr. General Counsel or Miss General Counsel, than I will, because it's just, there's no such thing as like an opportunistic general counsel job like there is for a partner or an associate in a law firm. I get these jobs when they come to me, and when the company has agreed budget wise, they need a recruiter and can afford a recruiter to help with it. I can't just go out and find in-house jobs for people left and right. I wish I could, but I can't. So like the people generally job hunting for in-house stuff, I'll talk to them. I'll kind of save the resumes, but those really come about more when the companies need it. We can't be quite so aggressive and kind of creating positions the way you can with a law firm.
That's fascinating. So what is your favorite thing about being a legal recruiter?
My favorite thing? Just like the building relationships. It's a lot of fun. Like, over time, people that I placed when I first started are, making their way to partner that now, or one of the smaller firms I'm currently working with, the managing partner of the firm is one of my former classmates. We graduated law school together. It's like kind of funny to think that we graduated so long ago that one of my colleagues could be a managing partner somewhere, but I'm just that old. So that's the reality of life. But it's just fun to like keep up with people's careers and see what they're doing. And, people come back to you when you do it right, people come back. And that's really nice and like makes you feel good and tells you you're on the right path and, you're helping people.
I love it because you talk about your career with an energy and passion that I think is fairly rare. And then I felt like when we were talking about the bank, like the work that you did when you were right out of law school, like you were a little heavier about it, right? I mean, granted, that was a different time period. You had some obviously really challenging clients. We were going through the Great Recession. Like you probably just felt super fortunate to have a job no matter what, right? Yeah. Just getting, you're like, thank God, that's huge. But it's interesting because I could tell just like in your energy level, like change when you talk about legal recruiting. And so I do want to ask you if you could give like any piece of advice to a young lawyer who is considering leaving the practice of law and doing something different, potentially in the legal field, but something different, not necessarily practicing law. Like, do you have any advice for that person?
Just be really open-minded. Like there's so many things out there. Recruiting is what I just fell backwards into, but other than having worked with a recruiter as a candidate once as an attorney, I didn't know anything about recruiting. No one goes to college to like be a recruiter. There's not a particular major that feeds into this. But there's all sorts of things though. I bought a book when I was a third year in law school about non-legal careers for lawyers. And I honestly didn't crack it once, but it was a whole book of non-legal careers for lawyers. That's a lot of stuff. There's plenty of options out there. And what you don't know after law school is what the heck else there is. So apply for stuff and keep an open mind and like just go on the interview.
Yeah.
If nothing else, it'll be practice for better interviews. But you never know what you don't know that's out there. There's so many things that you just would not think about that may present themselves to you, and see everyone around you as like a potential resource and definitely someone to learn from. Everyone has all of these different experiences. Everyone has a different network. You never know who you're going to meet and who you're going to talk to and where that's going to lead to. So just be open-minded. You never know what an opportunity is going to look like.
Yeah. And I think that as young lawyers, we get in our head what things should look like based on what society has told us things should look like, right? Or what our family has told us, or we see our friends over here doing this, right? And at the end of the day, we don't really know what's right for us until we try it. And I love that guidance of just being open-minded, right? And just being open to looking at different possibilities. That's the thing I think about practicing law, or like at least coming out of law school. I think it's one of those, I mean, as opposed to like going to medical school, right? Where you're going to be pretty narrow in terms of what you're going to be doing. You can come out of law school and do a lot of different things.
Right.
You could be a teacher, like you could do it. You could be an entrepreneur. You can be anything. So law school doesn't necessarily pigeonhole you further, although the further you get down into your particular practice, right? 6 years of bankruptcy work, it's like,
Right. You're a bankruptcy lawyer.
You're a bankruptcy lawyer, right? So, and like you said a minute ago, like I think that it is challenging to even think about kind of a mid-career shift in terms of a practice area. You don't really hear about that very much.
It's very challenging. Those positions are out there, but like in-house positions, there's a lot of interest in them because there are a lot of people who want to change their practice areas for various reasons. It's not something that a lot of attorneys get to work on. Like occasionally we'll work on those, but when it comes to our fees, they don't want to pay for someone they have to train. You can find a trainable lawyer anywhere. We've all been trained to sit for the bar and pass it, they don't want to pay a recruiter bill for someone that they have a time investment in greater than a normal lateral. So those positions are out there, but they're very competitive and they're very hard to get. And there's not a lot of them.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what is next for your career?
Continuing to grow my group. So I actually manage my team of recruiters throughout the Southeast. There are 8 of us right now, 8 of us. And I'm growing my team. At Beacon Hill, when I started here, only had attorney search in Boston. And so I joined with the intent of growing the Southeast region. So I'm looking for people in more of the key major markets throughout our region: DC, Richmond, the Carolinas, Nashville, Birmingham, the major markets in Texas, Florida. Constantly looking to grow with the right people who may or may not have recruiting interest or recruiting background. My whole group is former practicing attorneys, and we have 1 former paralegal. So I think the legal background is super important, but continuing to grow this group. And that's really like my short-term focus. Long-term, I don't know, except that I'm super duper happy here. And so I don't expect to make any other changes, although I said that at my last job and then I got recruited to come here, but I can't imagine being recruited again. I love this job and I love the company. So I continuing to grow the group and contribute to Beacon Hill overall is my goal.
I love that. So let me ask you this. If you were to write a letter to Marisa when she had been a bankruptcy attorney for 3 years, what's one piece of advice you would have given little Marisa, baby lawyer?
What is good advice I would have given to myself? I mean, I wouldn't necessarily do things differently because I'm happy with where I've landed. So I don't know that I would say do anything differently. I would, like a little motto I've kind of had is be courageous and have faith in yourself. And I kind of come back to that anytime there's a crossroads or I don't know, I'm not sure, I'm looking outside for approval or for, input or whatever. Stick to my gut because it's right. It's usually right. Listen to yourself, have faith in yourself. You can do it. You know, just do what's in your heart, do what's in your gut, follow your gut because it's right. Keep doing that.
I love that.
That's what I would do.
I think that intuition is something that we tend to maybe lean into as we get older a little more.
Yes.
As a younger person, right? Like as a younger person, I was always like, no, like if my gut says something, I was like, no, my brain knows what to do. Right. Or, let me go ask this person, or what are these other people doing? Right.
Right.
But it is definitely something that the older I've gotten and the more I lean into it, it doesn't fail me. My brain.
Exactly. Yeah. Your brain will fail you sometimes. Other people's brains will fail you plenty. Yeah, as I've gotten older, 28-year-old me versus today me, I had a good head on my shoulders then, but probably could have listened to it a little bit more.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, go with if you feel like something's right on the inside, don't make another decision. Go with that.
Right.
It's the right way to go for yourself. You're living a different life than everyone else. Don't ask everyone else or if you ask them their opinion, be prepared, to not take it or to feel unhappy if you take someone else's advice on things.
Yes, because I think that all too often as younger lawyers, I leaned in way too much to other people at the expense of trusting my gut. So that's amazing advice. I love that. And then you had that little mantra. I loved it.
Be courageous and have faith in yourself.
Be courageous and have faith in yourself. I absolutely love that. So
Mm-hmm.
let me ask you, Marisa, where can people find you online? And can they apply to work with Beacon Hill and Marisa?
Sure.
It sounds like you're looking for recruiters, right? So maybe
I am.
they'll hear this and they'll be like, oh, like would be really cool, right? Because
I think I'm a terrific boss.
Yeah.
Just ask me.
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you are.
I do like to think that the people that I work with also like me. Find me on LinkedIn is probably the easiest place online to find me. I have obviously a professional LinkedIn account, Marisa L. Simmons or Lead Simmons. I'm not sure what I've got up there. There are a couple of other Marisa Simmons, if you can believe it, but it's Marisa with one S. I'm the only one with giant curly hair and big glasses.
Beautiful, by the way. I love your giant curly hair. So people that are just listening to the podcast won't get to see it, but I will put your LinkedIn and any social media handles or whatever that you permit me to in like the show notes in the description of the show, so people can click on that too and find you.
Perfect. I'll make sure you have those. And yes, you can apply for jobs at Beacon Hill. I'm hiring for the Southeast, but we do have other groups throughout the country. I'm not entirely sure what their needs are, but I can always point you in the right direction. And if you are an attorney looking for either a lateral move or you need to hire someone, that's what we do. And like I said, I love talking to people. So give me a shout, find me on LinkedIn.
Reach out to Marisa, schedule a call with her.
That's right.
You often talk about prepping, about whether or not you're going to retreat to the mountaintops or the bunkers.
Yes.
I'm like you, Marisa. I'm all about, I got to be out in the fresh air. The mountains sound great. So, but thank you so much for being on here and sharing your story and giving just some really amazing, just nuggets of wisdom that I think are going to be so great for people. Thank you so much, Marisa.
Thank you for having me. This was fun.
It was fun. All right. I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye.